Moroccans have been holding protests against social inequalities and demanding the release of political prisoners and the establishment of real democracy in the North African state amid a government crackdown on critics. Hello and welcome to Africa Today. In this week's edition, apart from looking into the uprising in Morocco, we shall also focus on the persecution of members of the Islamic movement in Nigeria and the continued illegal detention of the movement's leader, Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki, and his wife. We'll be asking which foreign powers are pushing the Nigerian government to persecute members of the country's Islamic movement. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Mubarak Kenya.
Morocco uprising. The people of Morocco have been holding demonstrations in several parts of the country to protest and denounce social inequalities and the high cost of living, while demanding real democratic representation to the country, which has been a monarchy for centuries.
The latest demonstrations were organized by the Moroccan Social Front, a recently created movement formed of 4 left-wing parties, unions and civil organizations. The Moroccan Social Front says its objective is rejecting anti-democratic policies, social injustice and the decline in human rights and policies that led to the deterioration of purchasing power. For more on this, we have contacted Ali Bahijoub, political analyst and author. Thanks a lot for joining us, Mr. Bahijoub. Does the Moroccan Social Front enjoy support across the country?
Not necessarily. There are protests by different groups within Morocco itself, and they are free to protest in front of the parliament. In fact, you have almost daily protests in front of the Moroccan parliament in the capital Rabat. But it doesn't mean that there aren't any movements of protest. There are, but they are not actually inflicting any damaging blow to the country or its political system.
Thanks a lot and stay tuned.
Critics say Morocco's modernization has been marred by brutal crackdown on protests in the country. The country's development projects come against a backdrop of high unemployment among young people. This situation has ignited protests not only against unemployment, but also the high cost of living and the decline in public services. The protesters are also calling for the release of all political prisoners, especially those detained in the Reef protests. Demonstrators chanted slogans of solidarity with Nasser Zakzaki, the imprisoned leader of the Hirak Reef movement.
Nous sommes sortis pour dénoncer tout ce qui a été fait au niveau du RIF, tous les emprisonnements qu'il y a eu et les lourdes peines qu'ont eu les prisonniers du RIF, notamment 20 ans, 15 ans, 10 ans, etc. Donc ces gens-là ont manifesté dans le temps dans le RIF pour des revendications socio-économiques et ils se retrouvent en prison comme des pires terroristes et ça nous ne l'admettons pas, nous exigeons leur libération.
Une tristesse énorme. C'est injustifié, surtout quelqu'un qui est en pleine jeunesse, qui pourrait apporter beaucoup pour son pays, et tu le condamnes à une prison sans aucune justification.
A few months ago, King Mohammed VI pledged to formulate a new government development model in response to the deep social discontent that has given rise to resentment among Moroccans. Now, the Moroccan king last year promised a new development model in response to demands by protesters. Will this plan succeed in cooling down the growing protests?
I think the king has already formed a new committee of Moroccan elites, be they in Morocco itself or abroad. And these people are experts in their own fields. And this is a new initiative from the king to respond to the social and economic demands of certain sectors of the society in Morocco.
Stay tuned.
Last October, the Party of Progress and Socialism, PPS, announced its withdrawal from the current government coalition, led by its Islamist ally, the Justice and Development Party, PJD. PPS is now on the offensive against a government coalition it now considers ineffective and lacking the inspiration to solve the country's most salient social and economic issues. Is the current coalition government in Morocco powerful enough to implement demands by the protest movement?
Demands will always be there, whether it's in Morocco or anywhere else in the world. So the people will always ask for more. The more they get, the more they want. And Morocco is no exception. The government there is a coalition government, and it is actually trying to implement new policies to answer all the demands of the local population. The forthcoming elections next year is going to be very important, because that might change the coalition government and may change the political landscape in Morocco.
The 2011 Arab uprisings also led to the decentralization of social protests, which moved away from urban centers to Morocco's peripheral regions, which share common political and economic grievances. Meanwhile, according to human rights activists, Moroccan authorities have since September 2019 arrested and prosecuted at least 10 activists, artists, or other citizens who did nothing but peacefully express critical opinions.
Omar Radi, a well-known investigative journalist who exposed government corruption, was arrested last December, prompting protests in Rabat, Morocco's capital, with hundreds chanting "Free Omar" outside the country's parliament. Moroccans are hoping that through sustained protests, they can force changes such as those witnessed in neighboring Algeria and Sudan.
It was the first time we had, since years, we hadn't a large movement, street movement in the streets, and the only answer of the state was oppression, was violence, was torture, was arresting those people and sentencing them to years of jail.
Now, and in this section of our program, my colleague Sheila Nelima will be presenting you with news and events from Africa. What do you have today, Sheila?
Thank you, Henia. Hello and welcome to this part of the program. It's Sheila Nelima bringing you news from around Africa. The more things change, the more they remain the same. After being lauded for spearheading major policy reforms and being awarded a Nobel Peace Prize, the Ethiopian government has been accused of carrying out harassment and intimidation. The members of the Oromo Liberation Front called out the government for unlawfully arresting its leaders. The government has refused to account for the whereabouts of one of the leaders who has been missing. Amnesty International joined in the demands to prompt the release. In other matters, South Sudanese refugees living in camps in the West Nile district have been advised to wait for clearance before deciding to head home. This came after reports were made that the refugees were departing from the camps at night, heading back to their homes following the revival of the peace process between the warring factions. The power-sharing agreement, although underway, has been said to be still in its premature stages with no guarantee to actual peace. On to sustainable energy. In a bid to cut dependence on fossil fuels, Senegal is turning to clean energy. The country inaugurated a large-scale wind farm, the first in West Africa. The facility is expected to provide a sixth of the country's power needs and cater to approximately 2 million people. Good news from Egypt. Tourists can now extend their permitted stay for up to 5 years, up from the original 90 days. The move is to attract more visitors from across the world. The Foreign Ministry stated that they will not only target tourists, but also business people to encourage investment flows and nourish the trading sector. Now to Mozambique. President Filipe Nyusi's Council of Ministers have created a state secretariat for youth and employment. The secretariat has been tasked to implement plans for creating 3 million jobs in 5 years. The plans involve adapting a diversified economy, enhance potential competitive sectors that can increase income generation and job creation, for young people. In the African art scene, today we focus on the Yemisi Shylon Museum of Art, named after a Yoruba prince from Ogun State, southwest of Nigeria. The prince is said to be one of Nigeria's largest art collector and the main donor of the museum that is located in the Pan-Atlantic University. The museum showcases traditional works of pre-colonial days to modern-day paintings and photographs. It aims to be an educational resource and a potential home to African works that will hopefully be returned home from Europe. This brings us to the end of this part. Visit our social media pages on Twitter and Instagram and interact with us. Share your views and comments on the program. Stay tuned. We will be back soon.
Justice denied.
Last February, a Nigerian court trying the leader of the Islamic movement in the country, Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki, and his wife adjourned the case until the 23rd and 24th of April 2020.
This delay in judgment comes at a time when Sheikh Zakzaki is in critical health condition and is in need of immediate medical attention.
The trial of leader of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, Sheikh Ibrahim al-Zakzaki, was held with tight security around the courthouse, with all roads leading to the court blocked by security operatives. Zakzaki is standing trial for unlawful gathering, criminal conspiracy, culpable homicide punishable with death. The High Court granted Sheikh Zakzaki access to his doctors and permission to seek medical treatment abroad if need be. This came after the deteriorating health condition of Sheikh Ibrahim al-Zakzaki and his wife. The court also agreed to separate Sheikh Zakzaki and his wife from two other defendants in order for the case to make progress. The military attacked Zakzaki's house and his worship center in December 2015, killing over 340 of his supporters and injuring hundreds and destroying their properties. A federal high court, Abuja, in December 2016 ruled that Zakzaki's rights have been violated and ordered him and his wife to be released. The government refused to obey the court order and instead transferred Zakzaki to Kaduna and filed these charges. This case has been adjourned to the 25th of March 2019, when hearing in earnest is expected to commence. Members of the Islamic movement in Nigeria are expected to continue their protest rally in many cities to get authorities to release their leader.
Sheikh Zakzaki, who is in his mid-60s, has been in illegal detention since December 2015 after his residence in the city of Zaria was brutally raided by Nigeria's forces.
Tun daga misalin karfe 3 saura na ranar Asabar, sojoji suka tsare 'yan uwa a cikin Husainiya har zuwa kimanin karfe 3 na dare. A nan ne sojojin suka haska fitilun mota suka bayar sanarwa a loudspeaker cewa kowa ya fito daga Husainiya hannunsa a sama za su yi bincike.
During this brutal raid, hundreds were killed and many wounded, while Sheikh Zakzaki's wife had severe injuries. For more on this, Masoud Shajare, a London-based human rights campaigner, thanks for joining us at Africa Today. The court in Nigeria keeps postponing their trial of Sheikh Ibrahim Zakzaki and his wife. This strategy to delay and deny them justice?
It seems that this delay, which has been going on now for over 3 years, is not serving any purpose except delaying the justice. And also, when you take into the account that the highest court in the land already in 2016 ordered their release and compensation to be paid, and the fact that up to this date, which is 4 and some years after the incident, no one has ever been taken to court and found guilty, it shows that the law in Nigeria is being used just to delay, as a delaying tactic.
Stay tuned for more.
According to several sources, Sheikh Zakzaki and his wife are in critical health condition and require immediate independent medical attention. Last year, Sheikh Zakzaki and his wife went to India to receive medical care. However, they were forced to leave India after a few days in protest against the Nigerian government's obstruction of his medical treatment and after they had lost all faith in the prospect of receiving proper treatment there.
Ofishin jakadin da shi Najeriya ya zo nan mun tattauna da shi mun daɗe muna magana lokacin ne masa bayanin cewa muke bayanin cewa ga abin da muke da bukata in dai har ba zai yiwu mu sami wani wurin da muka amince ba.
The court in Kaduna had ordered the prison authorities to allow the Sheikh's doctors to treat him and his wife. The authorities have acted with impunity and refused to obey the court. Mr. Shajare, what's the current state of health of Sheikh Zakzaki and his wife?
Well, what we know is that a year ago, the court ordered him to sort of go overseas for medical attention because medical attention that he needed would not be available in Nigeria. Now, nothing has changed except the fact that this delay of almost a year has made his health more complicated, and something needs to be done and on a very urgently. And the fact that the court again recently put pressure on the authorities to allow doctors to have access to him shows that his health has been ignored by the system in Nigeria while he's being kept illegally in prison.
Thanks and stay tuned.
Sheikh Zakzaki has often spoken out against the injustices perpetrated by the United States and has accused Washington of igniting discord among Muslims and spreading war and plunder in many Muslim countries. He has also continually condemned the Israeli entity for its occupation of Palestine. Some sources say the Nigerian government has postponed the release of Sheikh Zakzaki following pressure from Saudi Arabia, the US, and the Israeli regime.
Now, if the Soviet Union collapsed because it was based on false narration, what do you think of what you may call Western ideology, capitalism? Will it survive? Is it based on true narration?
Are the foreign powers or entities involved in the current persecution of Sheikh Zakzaki?
Well, we have heard Netanyahu saying that he's putting pressure on Nigeria and is increasing his influence in Africa. And also we have heard and we have seen some documentation of Saudi's involvement, putting pressure and saying that they want to eliminate interests of other nations in Nigeria.
During the brutal arrest of Sheikh Zakzaki, 3 of his sons were also killed. His wife sustained serious wounds, and hundreds of his followers were killed in what is now known as the Zaria massacre. After the massacre by Nigerian forces, Sheikh Zakzaki faced trumped-up charges of murder, culpable homicide, unlawful assembly, the disruption of public peace, and other accusations.
He has pleaded not guilty vehemently rejecting all the accusations brought up against him. In 2016, Nigeria's Federal High Court ordered Zakzaki's unconditional release from jail following a trial, but the government has so far refused to set him free. Meanwhile, the Nigerian government has rejected any independent inquiry on the Zaria massacre. Is the continued detention of Sheikh Zakzaki part of a wider effort to cover up the gruesome crimes committed by members of the security forces in Zaria in December 2015 that left hundreds dead?
Well, Nigerian government is under pressure by ICC, International Court, to respond to the genocidal act that took place, which resulted in massacring more than 1,000 innocent men, women, and children. And that investigation is still going on. In the recent report, ICC actually said that they have given Nigeria the current year for them to resolve this. Otherwise, the International Court will get further involved. And Nigerian government is using any tactic to divert attention from that. So yes, to some extent.
Leading international human rights organizations have accused the Nigerian authorities of failing to ensure justice for the killings of hundreds of members of the Islamic movement of Nigeria. Human Rights Watch says the repression against the Islamic movement of Nigeria by government security forces risks creating grievances that could worsen Nigeria's already precarious security situation. Nigerian authorities continue to suppress members of the Islamic movement of Nigeria. Hundreds of the movement's members have been killed, injured, or arrested since the 2015 Zaria massacre. Nigerian security forces also regularly use excessive pressure to disperse members of the Islamic movement demanding the release of Sheikh Zakzaki. The unnecessary use of force, especially lethal force by security forces, violates Nigeria's obligations under international law, including the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, as well as national constitutional guarantees of the rights to life and freedom of religion, peaceful assembly, and movement. Western countries, which have massive economic and security interests in oil-rich Nigeria, have remained silent or are actually complicit in the crimes being committed by the regime of President Muhammadu Buhari against members of the Islamic movement. Western countries claim to champion for human rights, yet they have remained silent on the Zaria massacre and the continued illegal imprisonment of Sheikh Zakzaki. Why the double standards?
The fact of the matter is that they are supportive of the current government, Buhari's government, and they are actually giving it sort of ability to commit murder and kill its own citizens and commit these sort of atrocities. And but I think the time is running out. Nigerian government has to make a decision that is it going to end this behavior which is serving no purpose for the interests of Nigeria, or would it continue sort of behaving so badly because certain Western governments and Saudis and the Israelis want that.
Western countries' support for the Nigerian government, which continues to suppress members of the Islamic movement of Nigeria, is a classic case of double standards on human rights. I'm your host, Mubarak Kenya. Thank you for watching the show, and goodbye for now. God bless.